last week, Donald Trump and Elon Musk broke up. Very sad, very public, very messy. Donald Trump called him crazy. Elon Musk said that Donald Trump was in the Epstein files. However, Trump stayed quiet for a lot longer than a lot of people expected. However, Donnie woke up feeling different today. He's moving different right now. He made a threat to Elon, saying that Elon will face, quote, very serious consequences if he funds Democratic candidates in the 2026 midterms. Democrats have been attempting to poach Elon since this breakup, and they're fucking stupid for it. When I covered this story, I talked about how stupid they were for doing this because Elon is a Nazi, he's a terrible human being, and he's political suicide. I'm curious, however, what the very serious consequences would be. Do we think that Donald Trump would seize all of Elon Musk's assets and put them under total control of the government, a sort of nationalization, if you will? That would be mighty good. I can't even lie. If that is one of the serious consequences, I'm rooting for that. The nationalization of Elon Musk's assets and even perhaps the redistribution of some of those assets.
His relationship with Elon Musk is now over after their online feud exploded last week. When asked by NBC's Christian Welker if he has any desire to repair ties with Musk, Trump said no, adding he has no intention of speaking to the Tesla CEO. But Trump also issued a warning to Musk, saying he will face very serious consequences if he funds Democratic candidates to run against Republicans that vote in favor of the budget bill. Trump didn't share what those consequences would be. The president also cast doubt on the notion that Musk's opposition would even sink the bill, claiming he's more confident than ever it will pass because Republicans are more unified in the wake of that public feud. Joining us now, national politics reporter for The Hill, Julia Manchester. Julia, is that true? Do you get the sense that Republicans are more unified now than ever? I couldn't help but notice that Senator Ron Johnson, who has been outspoken about his concerns about this bill, was ever so slightly more muted over the weekend. Is that a sign of what the president's talking about here?
Well, look, Ali, I think you have a lot of these fiscal conservatives who had, problems in the first place with the sign of this bill, the size of this bill, like Ron Johnson, for example, maybe holding back in their criticism a bit. However, in general, if you take a broader look at Republicans as a whole, I think they are very much unified behind President Trump. I think President Trump at this point is obviously the face and the leader of the Republican Party. Even though Elon Musk holds quite a bit of influence, I still think President Trump holds some sway there.
Elon does not have even a comparable amount of motion to Donald Trump. Elon's entire fan base is online. Online does not translate to the real world. Twitter is not real life. Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party cucked to him. Elon Musk was even cucked to Donald Trump leading up to and throughout his first couple of months in office because Elon thought that he would get some shit out of it. Now, however, none of these Republicans are going to side with Elon Musk. If he thinks that he would be able to go band for band with Donald Trump, I think that is a fight that he is not equipped to deal with, at least in terms of actually being able to persuade people to like him. Because he's just grossly unlikable. Even the people within Trump's administration were like, yo, this guy's like just really strange.
The only issue, though, is, like I said, with those very fiscally conservative Republicans who might, see some agreement with Elon Musk on this. And I think with Elon Musk going forward, if we look at him, as a potential, I don't want to say challenger to President Trump, but someone who's going to be a voice of opposition, he is someone who has, over 22 million, Twitter or X followers. He's someone who has that very broad, wide platform. So, he is someone who could certainly push back on Trump. But right now, I think Republicans are relatively unified behind the president.
I don't really call it X either, Julia, for what it's worth. It's hard to get out of that old habit. Yeah, it definitely happens. But look, they are also men who culturally are still aligned. I mean, you look at Elon Musk's feed right now, and he's echoing a lot of the same sentiments that Trump and others within the administration are echoing around immigration and what we're seeing on the ground in Los Angeles. So there is still a mutuality between these two guys. I think the open question is, and this is a question for Republicans and Democrats, frankly, what role politically could Musk play? You see Trump saying he'll face consequences if he funds Democrats. But the other litmus test on the Democratic side of the aisle has been, would you even take that money from him? People like Senator Cory Booker and others saying, no, I wouldn't take it. But that's kind of where Democrats are being faced right now, right? Like, how do they maneuver around the Musk of it all?
It's very simple. You don't entertain him in the slightest degree. You don't take any of his money. Well, first of all, he should not even be able to donate money to politicians. Billionaires, corporations, the mega wealthy should not be allowed to donate, or they should be capped at like $200, whatever the cap is for individuals, that should be for them as well. But my fear is that if this type of play continues to get time on air, more and more Democrats are going to be like, actually, no, I think that this is a really good idea for us to bring this fucking neo-Nazi into our campaign. Like, it's ridiculous. Elon does not have good ideas. He does not have good vibes. He does not have good favorability. He was, I think, significantly more unpopular than both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, if my memory serves me correctly. I do know that his net favorability over the last couple years or so has tanked because of all of the shit that he's done to the federal government. I think that if Democrats embrace Elon, they're going to get the same treatment that Republicans have gotten from their constituents. Like going to town halls and booing them, making fun of them, this, that, whatever. And it would be totally justified. Because again, Elon slashed crucial funding all throughout the federal government, whether that be for medical research, whether that be for medical care and mental health care, particularly through the VA, whether that be for Social Security. He went after so many agencies that the American people actually love. And again, beyond that, he's a out and about Nazi who has a pill box with 20 different kinds of pills in it.
Well, it's interesting because you have Congressman Ro Khanna from California, who is seen as this more progressive figure, but, you know, obviously has those ties to Silicon Valley. It's a part of his congressional district. He's saying, look, Democrats should open up a dialogue with Elon Musk. But
Ro Khanna is a loser. He's a loser for thinking that. That would be political suicide.
You know, I think, that's going to be very difficult for a number of Democrats at this point, because like you said, Musk and Trump are politically and culturally aligned here. I think it would be hard for a lot of Democrats to jump on board, particularly in the wake of these mass, DOGE cuts and, Elon Musk's role in really trying to reduce the size of the federal government. The question I have politically, though, is less about what, him potentially funding Democratic challengers, but potentially maybe conservative or Republican challengers, people who might be aligned with, let's say, Ron Johnson, who are, pushing back against the size of that so-called big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, and certainly Johnson has company there, right? There's plenty of House Republicans who were strong-armed into voting for this the first time. There's an open...
Or because they didn't read it like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Question of maybe they get a little bit more oomph behind their complaints because of someone like Musk. But I want to kind of stay on the campaign politics of it for 1 second, because we've seen Musk be a pretty salient political point for Democrats. I know it's a limited set of information, but Wisconsin, Florida, that was the height of Musk and DOGE. In your conversations with Democratic strategists, do they still see that as something that they want to play up, even though Musk has made an about face on this key piece of legislation?
I think to an extent, I think Democrats and Republicans I actually talk to sort of downplay Musk's influence politically when it comes to elections. I mean, he, put what, $100,000, $200,000 into those Florida races, but it was really special elections, but it was really that Wisconsin Supreme Court race that was seen as in a way, a failure for Musk. He poured millions and millions of dollars, traveled to Wisconsin to campaign, for the conservative campaigning for that seat. And he ultimately failed. And even though he's really pushing, or last Friday or Thursday, he was saying, well, Republicans wouldn't have a majority or President Trump wouldn't be president if it wasn't for me. If you actually look at Musk's record during the presidential campaign, even though he was the top individual donor, not all of his endorsed candidates and congressional candidates won. And we know that, President Trump's campaign was in many ways a team effort.
My view on Elon's political influence has changed slightly. He did not single-handedly win Donald Trump the election. He didn't buy the White House for Donald Trump entirely. It definitely helped. It helped considerably, but I think what played a role more so than his direct campaign donations was him buying Twitter. I think that was better for Republicans than just his outright donations to Donald Trump, because although online is not real life, online has the ability to warp people's perceptions of reality if they don't go outside. That is the key. That is the key factor here. If you spend a lot of your time online, what you see online, you are think is going to be indicative of what's going on in the real world. Particularly if you're a younger person, right? And as we know, younger people voted for Trump more so than younger people went for Trump at a larger rate than they had in previous elections. However, Donald Trump's electoral success was more of Kamala's incompetence than it was Musk's funding. Republicans tend to win elections with lower turnout. And as we know, Donald Trump did not win a majority of votes. He won a plurality of votes in 2024. But Elon's the money faucet that is Elon Musk certainly played a role. But I think that, as we saw, especially with state and local politics, the money means less there, because people who are voting in those kinds of local elections, especially in like a Supreme Court race or a special election, those people are actually tapped in to what's going on politically. Like, they are the most engaged voter, because the majority of people just go out and they vote in the midterms, or they vote for their senators or the president, and that's it. The money is not so much of an issue, although it still is. But you're not going to be able to have the same level of influence the more local you get with your elections.
From Republicans across the ecosystem. So I think there is a downplaying as to how much of a threat Musk could be going forward.
Yeah, I do hear that downplaying. I also think that Democrats could have success if they continue to keep him in the spotlight. Plus, regardless of whether or not it was a team effort, a few $100 million always helps in a campaign year, especially in states like Pennsylvania. Julia Manchester, thank you for joining us.
A few $100 million is going to help you no matter what the fuck that few $100 million is going to. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. I do not think that Democrats should embrace Elon Musk in the slightest. I think they should continue to highlight all of the damage he has done to the administrative state, to the social safety net. I am very curious, however, to see if Elon is willing to bankroll all of these candidates in the Republican midterms. I'm curious because it's important to remember the candidates that Donald Trump handpicked in various governor, mayoral races a couple years ago in the midterms. They sucked ass. And it goes back to the point I just made. The more localized the election, the more tapped in the voter base is, the less you can rely on vibes, and the more you have to rely on an actual policy record. Republicans tend not to have policy records. And if they do have policy records, they are disastrous. The policy record that is associated with Elon Musk is going to be remarkably damaging, because all of these Republicans are going to run on cutting the waste, ending the fraud and the abuse, and people are going to remember all of the stories they read about veterans losing access to their mental health care. They're going to remember all of the stories that they read about pediatric cancer research being cut, and they're going to pin those memories directly and rightfully onto Elon Musk.